What's up, y'all? It's your girl, Ashley L. of I'm the Mama podcast, where we discuss the ins, the outs, and everything in between of being a mom. So I'm excited for you to join me today. This is going to be our final episode of season 2. When I tell you it's flown by, but again, it's just something that I definitely enjoy taking out the time to meet with you all and go over various topics together when it comes to being a new mom and the things that I'm experiencing in my journey and things like that. So thank you for continuing to tune in and being giving even feedback. Some of these topics are ones that I've created, but others are ones that other moms have come and reached out to me, or even dads. I've had dads reach out to me and was like, hey, this would be a good topic to discuss. Not going to get into the bells and whistles as to if they were trying to point out something or address something or planning and hear something direct. But again, just whatever the reason, just you engaging, it has been great and greatly appreciated there. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And don't stop. Even though this is the final episode of season 2, I will obviously be coming back with season 3. So if there's any content that you are hoping to hear, then definitely let me know. But today, we have an interesting topic that I'm excited to be able to talk about. But of course, before doing so, I want to give a shout out. And this shout out is very special to me. This shout out is to God. Because lately, I've been working on strengthening my personal relationship, and this year just really been focusing on aligning myself with him more. And it's been an amazing journey so far, and to say the least. And I'm just so looking forward to what is to come and to continue to grow within my faith and things like that. And so during this journey so far, I've been able to just learn more about myself. I've been able to learn how to be able to love myself, learn how to give grace to myself, and also learning how to love others as well. You couldn't tell me before that I wasn't loving others the same way. But one thing that I was able to realize so far is that I have to learn how to love myself the same way that God loves me and how he sees me. And then also, that's how I'm supposed to love others as well. So I'm not here to preach or anything, but again, that's just something I definitely wanted to call out within this journey for me. I can't leave him out. This has been a monumental moment. And again, it doesn't stop here. It's just going to continue to go. But again, it's just important. And we recently had a situation that just caused me to call this out because it was a scary and unexpected moment for us. And so, with having our son, there's certainly things that we have not, and, we hope not to have to experience. We hear these stories from other people I know even when my son was born, people were like, oh, get ready for that earache and get ready for when his teeth grow in, what's going to happen with his ears and da 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 da. And just all of these things that they experienced, which I didn't take it, negatively or anything. Definitely had an open ear just to listen. But again, it was just kind of like, oh, I hope that we don't experience those things. And so fortunately, we haven't experienced much at all. But I have mentioned before that, my son, when it comes to childcare, it actually takes place here in our home. And so fortunately, this has prevented him from, being around various sicknesses and germs and things like that that can take place in daycare. And I'm not knocking daycare at all. That's just one of the things that I've realized with him being at home, he does miss out on. Now that could be looked at as a good or a bad thing. Some of you may be saying he needs those germs, Ashley, to be able to, get his immune system to fight those things. And, again, I definitely understand that. But again, when just kind of looking at how his day-to-day is handled, he's here at the house. And so he hasn't come in contact with any of those germs and sicknesses and things like that typically we hear take place. So somehow, though, he and my husband end up getting sick. And, it started off what seemed to be like pretty calm. one morning, he did end up waking up, and, he immediately was crying, just crying, crying, crying. And we had already kind of noticed dad being congested and things like that. So we noticed our son just crying, crying, crying this one morning. And he was telling his dad, like, water, like, I want water. So he not only within that quick setting drank one, but he actually ended up drinking 2 cups, regular size cups, for a toddler, of water in that one sitting. And so I was like, we're gonna have to keep an eye on this. Y'all know how we are, mamas. I was like, we're gonna have to keep an eye on this. Like, yeah, I'm happy to see him drinking all this water, but it's not normal for him to drink this in one sitting. And then, this is his normal water intake for the day. So I did mention to dad, like, I definitely want us to, look out for this. And so that day after that, he ended up being good. Coughing a little bit here and there, but just nothing alarming, right? And so the next morning, by that time, we went ahead and decided, hey, Dad, you may need to go ahead and quarantine yourself, just in case. And so the next morning, I was getting him together, and I happened to notice that he was like super congested, and all of the congestion was in his chest. This is something he's never experienced before. And it was to the point that he could barely talk to me. He was trying to say different words, but the words weren't even coming out. And so my first initial thought is, let me take his temperature. Let's see what's going on. So I took his temperature. His temperature ended up being 101. And I'm like, okay, no need to panic. All good. Let me just get some Tylenol here, and that'll fix this little fever that seems like it's trying to kick in. Right. And so he took his Tylenol, and we mentally, I'm like, okay, he'll be good. I informed his nanny of, him being congested, and let's go ahead and start him off with breakfast and get him going as his normal day. And so he ate his breakfast, and again, you could tell he was trying to kind of act normal, and he just seemed pretty tired, and I kind of contributed that to the Tylenol that he just took. And so a few hours later, I'm sitting here working from home, and his nanny ends up coming up and to get my attention. And when she came upstairs, she was holding my son, and he just looked like super limp in her arms, right? And so I immediately hopped off of Zoom. I was like, I gotta go, gotta check and see what's going on with my son. And so apparently, what she informed me is during his nap, he threw up multiple times. Of course, she tried to give him some water. He was unable to drink. And then also, she told me he hasn't peed all morning in his diaper. And that's a indicator of him being dehydrated. Okay. Now, I started to panic a little bit, but I tried not to show it because I didn't want him to see that. And so, she also mentioned, when trying to give him water and stuff, like his eyes began to kind of slowly roll a little bit, and he just wanted to sleep in her arms. And so we end up taking his temperature again. Temperature increased to 102, and he was just extremely hot all over his body. And so, I was like, let's go ahead. His nurse informed that, they had been a lot of cases recently when it comes to flu patients, over the past few weeks. And so it was like, let's see what's going on. I called his doctor's office. They said the same thing. His nurse was like, hey, yep, he can't really come in. We're jam-packed again with all of these flu cases. And so I recommend you take him to urgent care or to ER. All right. And so that's exactly what I did. I'm the type of mom, like, I like to be in front of the ball, proactive as much as possible. And if you say based off of the symptoms, I'm telling you he needs to go, then we're going to go. And so before leaving, he ended up throwing up a few more times while just trying to get him together, get him some, new clothes put on, and getting him in the car. And so it was a very scary experience. And so we end up going to urgent care because that was the cheaper option or more affordable option, but they were end up being booked up, and it was going to take 2.5 hours before they were going to even be able to see him, y'all. And so they were like, okay, he is dehydrated. get him to ER. So fortunately, the hospital by us has a pediatric ER that he was able to go to that is separate from regular ER. And so I just, yeah, I just was nervous, and I want to shout out to my mom as well, because I could tell that she could hear that in my voice. She could tell that I was trying to be calm, but she could tell that she also needed to be there. And so whenever I need her, she's always there, whether I say that, mommy, I need you here or not. She's showing up just to make sure that I'm going to be okay throughout whatever this process is that we're about to go through. And so she could definitely sense it. So I can definitely appreciate her, being in tune with me. And at that moment, I did need her, even though I wasn't verbally saying that. And so upon arriving at the ER, they took his temp. It had increased now to 103, and everything's kind of started going through my mind in regards to things that I've heard before on, when your child temperature is this, you got to do this, you got to get them to ER, and this could happen and this could happen. And I know even dad brought up about, brain damage at some points and things like that. And so, I'm starting to get a little bit nervous, but I did keep praying the entire time. I prayed over my baby, holding his hands, placing my hand on his forehead, praying for that temperature to come down. And I didn't stop praying. It kind of brought me back to when I was in delivery, having to have that emergency C-section or emergency cesarean, just how I couldn't call on anybody else but God during that time, because he knew how I felt, but I had to keep the faith, right? And so the ER, gave him some meds and, for him throwing up. And then they also gave him Motrin because they wanted to get his temperature down. That was the main thing. They wanted to get that fever down. And then they also did a nose swab for him to find out what this was. And so it ended up coming back that he had the flu. And even after giving him Motrin, they took his temperature again. He was exhausted, and his temperature ended up rising to 104, y'all. All right. And so again, just praying, because I'm like, yeah, he's going to be good. And so they gave him Tylenol. And then after about 30 minutes, we did notice, him perking back up, coming back to his self. Even though he hadn't drinking any fluids yet, we noticed him starting to engage with us more, him being able to talk. And at a moment, he just ended up saying, amen. That's one of his favorite words. And so next thing you know, of course, I'm teary-eyed and things like that. But I feel like that was just God's way of just letting me know, like, I hear you, I see you, and you are going to be okay, and your baby's going to be okay. And next thing you know, the nurse came back in, checked his temperature, and it was down to 101. And so during that time, again, just try to stay as calm as possible. Prayed heavily because that's all I know to do. And again, caught the flu, and it took all of my energy. But fortunately, I didn't catch the flu throughout the whole time of even watching him. Again, staying prayed up, him being all in my face, giving me a lot of cuddles and needing cuddles and love and kisses and things like that. And me being like the sole caregiver during that time. I never caught it the entire time, y'all. And so again, I just give all glory to God for that. And so again, this isn't a ministry, but I definitely have to give a shout out because it's necessary. All right. Now, when it comes to giving energy, like I mentioned, during that time, I gave all of my energy to my baby. But when speaking of energy, that kind of goes into what we're discussing today, which is about these pandemic babies. Some of us may have them. Of course, we adore them. But throughout the pandemic, there were so many trends of how they are built different. All right. And if you are on social media, you know exactly what I mean. I would say it was the top trend for sure. And so during this time, we're in a pandemic, we're all at home. So we're watching these babies and how what we've seen is them developing earlier than normal. And so here I am pregnant, like, oh, I'm about to have a pandemic baby. Oh my goodness, what are we about to get into? And so one thing that I thought about though is, again, we're all at home, we're on lockdown, right? So was it really a pandemic baby thing? Or maybe, we were just more prone now to be able, since we have the time, to pull out our phones and capture the moments unlike prior years. And so we're just seeing these, and we're on our phones a lot more during that time. And so we're just seeing it a little bit more. We're having the time to actually see this take place. So again, not sure if it was a pandemic baby thing or if it was actually just the fact of it being captured and us seeing more into people's lives during this time. But nonetheless, it was definitely a highlight of my social scrolling, especially during my pregnancy. So I do want to give some stats. So, according to CNN Health, 2021 was the first time in 7 years that the US birth rate increased. Births have been dropping by an average of 2% a year since 2014, y'all, including a decline of twice that much between 2019 and 2020. Now, nearly 3.7 million babies were born in the US in 2021. That's about 46,000 more than were born in 2020. But the 1% increase still put the number short of 2019 levels, right? Now, I don't know about y'all, but I know my friend circle, along between 2020 and 2021, it seemed like everybody had a baby during that pandemic. It seemed like everybody was pregnant, whether it be someone from my friend circle, whether it be family, whether it be just somebody on social media, whether it be celebrities. It seemed like you could not look and not see somebody that was pregnant. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, this generation about to be bigger than the baby boomers, the way these babies are just popping out everywhere. That was my thoughts. I don't know about y'all, but that was something I was definitely thinking about. Like, we beat the baby boomers. And so that's just something funny. And again, statistic wise, it doesn't look like that took place, but it was good to think about it and exciting to see. But I do want to just talk about the obvious of what does make them different during this pandemic baby time. And so, very first thing is that, they were born during a worldwide pandemic. We were locked down in our homes. A lot was taking place, something unnormal or abnormal to us, right? And so, to me, what this did cause after having the baby is, fewer play dates have taken place and, limited social development with other children as well. We have to keep in mind, again, some people still obviously, people were getting together in their little groups. But as far as like activities, like even during my pregnancy, I was looking to be able to join classes in person to be able to learn more about, the baby birthing process and things like that. Or after having him, getting him engaged with other babies. But those classes were nowhere to be found, right? And so that's one thing that was actually different during this time, unlike prior pandemic years. And then also, the development of the child was heavily reliant during this time on the caregiver since many daycare facilities were closed. Okay. Now, let's really think about this. This could have been impactful, or it could have actually affected, the child, developing, depending on how involved the parent or the caregiver, was during that time, along with dealing with their own stress and uncertainties regarding this pandemic. So I know me, like, I was on like 9.5 as far as stress levels, when it came to the pandemic. I was just telling my friend yesterday, prior to the pandemic, I was good. I'm sorry, prior to getting pregnant, I was good. I was okay with being around people, going places still. But it seemed like as soon as I got pregnant, all these thoughts just kind of came in of, oh, I got to protect him and I don't want him to get this, and, different things. And how can I prevent myself? And so y'all heard it before. I end up getting into an isolated box, So again, as far as caregivers and parents, since their children can't go to these daycares, learn and develop, were you investing time to help them learn? These even go to the kids that had to come home from school. Like, were we investing the time And if so, then it could have been impactful. I know, like for us, we did a lot with our son, and we have a nanny that is really big on learning and development. And so our son isn't missing a beat. And so he actually just went to his appointment, 18-month appointment, and doctor told him that, or told us that he's on a 2-year-old level already. And so again, I just kind of look at that as far as being different. We're used to the busyness of life. And so daycares were the ones that were really helping our child learn and develop. So during this time, you had to either take a step back and really invest and spend time and be intentional with your child, your baby, to help with their growth, their motor skills, their growth, their learning, their development, their social skills. All of that was placed upon us here in the household, right? And then what about this? This generation is very aware of face masks instead of being able to see many people's actual entire faces. And so when I think about this, like when I was growing up, of course, even as a child, I heavily relied on my parents' tone. I heavily relied on their facial expressions, being able to see their words coming out of their mouth, which would help me learn, to be able to get a full understanding of, maybe it's something I'm being asked to do or what I'm being told to do. And so now they are learning more by not being able to see those things. The masks are the new norm, right? So again, this could be beneficial, but it can also be looked at as being maybe this can affect the development of the children. Who knows? And so, these are just to name a few of the more serious things. But let's talk about some of the interesting videos that, like I mentioned on social media, that I was seeing being highlighted that I can recall. So I was able to see, a newborn baby, y'all. And I don't know if y'all can remember this, kind of going back to social media, scrolling during the pandemic times, but watching a newborn lift their head up. Again, I'm not sure if that's pandemic, baby, or if that's just the fact that we are now capturing these moments for the media to see. But to me, that was crazy. That baby had just been delivered, and I think only was like 9 hours old, and was lifting their head, looking around and everything, right? And then another one was 6-month-olds walking. Like, where they do that at? I am glad that my son was not walking at 6 months, because when he did start walking, it's turning over a new leaf for him, but it's also opening up a lot of things here in the house. You can't stop him now. He's on the go. Every moment that he's out, not sleep, he's on the go, wanting to do something, wanting to be involved and into something, whether that be in the cabinet, whether that be in the dishwasher, whether that be all on the couch. He's just gone. So imagine that starting earlier at 6 months. And then what about this one? Babies holding their bottle by themselves within weeks of being born. There were quite a few videos of that, of these week-old babies, weeks, just holding the bottle like a G, just holding the bottle, doing their thing by themselves, independent. And then talking at 5 months, teeth coming in early. Some of these babies had all their teeth in by the time they was hitting a year old. And then, getting in and out of car seats on their own. Now, that is one thing that I can say that I've noticed with my son. And even, like I said, my friend circle and things like that. This generation is very independent. And again, I don't know if it's just because we're now having our newborns, our first-time parents, and so we're recognizing it more. But I will say they seem to be very independent. And so maybe that's just a child trend anyways, but it's definitely recognizable within this specific pandemic trend, right? And then, this one kind of pointed out and resonated with me of the first time many of our pandemic babies either attended their first birthday or attended a birthday for the first time as a toddler and how shocked they were. Like, what is this? Who are all these people? Especially if you had them wearing masks. Why are they all looking at me at one time? I've never seen this many people before in my life. What is this in front of me? This is a cake? What is it? Just the expressions are so, it was hilarious, but just can't imagine what was going on in their minds during that time. But for us, as far as my household, we honestly really didn't experience many of those or any of those at all, other than, again, the shock of our son's first birthday. But I do admit that all of these were great to be able to watch on social media and to keep me engaged and busy with doing something while nursing or, while he's snapping and things like that. So now I want to turn it over. I want us to hear from a few mamas regarding their experience with having pandemic babies themselves. So mamas, of course, life was different when we were pregnant and had our babies. Was there anything that affected you or thoughts that you had during this time?
As far as the pandemic and my feelings, I would definitely say that I felt alone a lot of the times throughout my pregnancy, especially the second and third trimester, simply because I did have a couple of pregnancy complications, which required me to go to the hospital multiple times throughout the week. And so the fact that my husband wasn't really able to accompany me during those times, it messed with my mental a lot. Just going through the motions and just not feeling like I fully had that support physically, even though I know that he tried the best to his ability at that time. It was definitely different than my first pregnancy for sure. But I still wouldn't trade it for the world. God brought us through. God brought me through, my child, my friends, and their children. And again, I couldn't ask for a better blessing at that particular time. I'm sure a lot of you moms can relate to me as far as that feeling while you were pregnant at that time. But yeah, it's just, I'm glad I'm out that funk now. Again, it was definitely a process. Just looking back, I'm just thinking about it. But yeah, it was definitely a different process. But God is good.
Okay, so yeah, of course, when I was pregnant, I did get pregnant at the end of 2020, which was still, a pandemic. COVID was going on. Masks were required. Vaccinations were required, as it is still today. People were dying. All that affected me. And then just time when it was time to like go into labor and have my baby, and only one person was required to be in the room with you. So of course it was me and his dad, but it was like you wanted your family there, you wanted your mom, you wanted the extra support, but they couldn't be there because of everything that was going on. So I would probably say that affected me the most because this was my first baby. And then the fact that I had to have a C-section, so that's a major surgery. So it was just a lot that I had to go through, and prayer, talking to my family, having the right people encourage me. But it definitely was triggering, and it definitely hit me in certain areas, because it's like now it's like not only are you worried about yourself, your family, you're also worried about this new life that's growing inside you, and you have to protect them. So it was a lot of emotions at the time. I could probably say I was affected by a lot. I'm grateful that I did endure.
Pandemic affected me on a personal level, outside of me having my baby. And so it affected me on a mental and emotional level. And I noticed that after I had him, and I dealt with a lot of postpartum depression, and I was very emotional. And being in the house with everything on lockdown, because I had him at the end of 2020 in December 2nd to be exact. And I just remember already going crazy from being in the house my whole pregnancy, that whole year of the pandemic in 2020. So being pregnant the whole year of 2020, having to be in a house, and I am not a homebody. So that kind of just made me emotionally and mentally unstable a little bit. Just because me going to do things and going out to eat and going places with my friends and family always allowed me the freedom to get away from work and issues at home. So that was always my getaway, and I felt trapped not being able to do the things I normally would do to just go get a breather. And so I would say after I had Dylan, my postpartum depression got really, really bad, and I was very emotional, and it was so like my emotions was all over the place, to be honest. And I don't know if it was because I was at home and forced to be at home, or if it was really the pregnancy that caused it.
Life was definitely different when I had my son. One of the things that was really different was the prenatal visits. I would go and I would have to video record the heartbeat or any kind of special moment. I would have to video record. I did not have my husband there with me, and I did not like that at all. Thankfully, toward closer to when it was time for me to almost give birth, he was able to make about 1 or 2 visits with me. So that was very, very special. So I would definitely say that was something completely different, just kind of not having that bond, that moment with your husband, to be able to be in the office with you, to share those beautiful moments. But thankfully, technology, I was able to at least take videos of that and send it to him. So that was really, really special.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely relate to you ladies. Like, I think for me, it was just nervous. I was nervous during this time. And again, as I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to prevent myself from catching COVID, due to the unknown. I think that's the biggest thing with things like this, the unknown of this virus, and how it can affect the baby during my pregnancy, how it can affect me. And also, I remember the big social trend that was also going on during this time regarding, if you got the vaccine or around others who had the vaccine, how it could affect women or how it was affecting women, causing like miscarriages, birth defects, menstrual issues. To me, like during that time, again, I talked about the beauty of social media, being able to see these pandemic babies do different things, but it was also very scary. It was a lot to take on during that time, especially being pregnant myself. When hearing all of those things, which again, don't have anything that confirms any of this information, but again, just seeing it trending was it made me a little nervous. All right. All right, mama. So my next question is, when you hear the term pandemic babies, what's your initial thought?
Initially, when I thought about the term pandemic baby and I heard it, my initial thought was, okay, they think that me and Raymond just in here having sex. Because that's what I would hear a lot. People just having so many babies, everybody getting it on. So I'm like, okay, they just think me and Raymond up in here having sex so much. So that always made me feel awkward. And then I also was thinking, okay, about my baby's developmental stages. And I was like, okay, is he going to be a little slow? Is his immune system going to be okay? I was thinking so many different things about that term pandemic baby.
When I hear the term pandemic babies, the first thing that comes to mind is social media and how they captured that word. Babies that were just born, they were able to do things outside of the norm, such as crawling, walking, or just trying to sit up. It was hilarious to watch and seeing that term on social media.
When I think about pandemic babies, I think about little miracles at such an unfortunate time in our society, and just reflecting on how I had to do things differently as far as like just making sure that I didn't have a lot of people around her, and as well as myself, and just the routine was just different than when I had my first child. You couldn't let anyone come into the doctor's appointments, and it was just a different strategy at that time. But I am thankful that everything went well, even though we had to take extra precautions. I just see them as like little miracles at that time.
So, when I first heard the term pandemic babies, I was just like, okay, they're being born at a time where it's a lot of chaos, people are dying, so of course it's a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, and then you hear that the babies are different. They're not the average babies, which is true. So when I think about pandemic babies, yeah, that term is definitely something different. It's not the average baby. They are moving, they're advanced, they are doing things that they shouldn't be doing at a certain age or time, but they're doing it as soon as they come out. That's like looking at you, holding your head up. Like, pandemic babies were something different, and I'm grateful that I was able to experience that, having me a little pandemic baby.
All right. Yeah. So this one for me always seems to ring, like I mentioned, like the baby boomers, just because, I think of every single person, whenever I hear the word pandemic baby, it's like literally a time lapse of everyone I know who seemed to be pregnant, which seemed to be, to me, the entire world, being pregnant during this time. And so it's like a time lapse that goes on in my mind of all these different faces of people who were pregnant during that time. So that's when I hear pandemic babies, that's the first thing that ends up happening for me. Okay, last question. So tell me about an experience you've had with your little one that may have been different, since, this generation is known as being different. So it can be something that I've highlighted already, but tell me about one of your experiences.
So the term pandemic babies is really popular, but I honestly can't really think of anything. I feel like my baby was pretty normal. However, I do feel like my baby was super alert. I know that there are babies that are alert and aware, but I feel like my child was really alert, like newborn through all the stages. He's currently 16 months now, and he is still very much aware and alert, and I love it. So yeah.
2 things I can say that my son was very different. Okay, I had him in 2021. So the first thing, when it was time for me to latch him on and breastfeed him, I did not need the lactation specialist. He knew exactly what he was doing. He latched on perfectly. They came in the hospital room. They was like, "Oh, you don't need us. He's good. He's perfect." I said, "Oh, okay." So that was the first thing. And me being a new mom, I'm just like, okay, am I doing this right? Whatever. So then, once I brought him home, he was only 1 month, and I recorded this, and I was like, hi Elijah, just messing with him. And I said, "Do you have something to say to mommy? Do you have something to say?" And remind you, he's 1 month. And he said, "Hi." And I was just like, wow, what kind of baby are you? And then I could remember my grandmother, she watched him at like probably 2 months. And she was like, "Baby, this baby is jumping out of my arms. Like, he wants to walk or crawl or go somewhere." And I'm just like, how? He literally just brought you home. But that's how advanced he was, and I was just like, yeah, these pandemic babies are different. So definitely different. When you think about having a pandemic baby, they are way more advanced. They're very alert, and my son is definitely that.
But when I had him, one thing that I did notice with him, and I don't know if this was because he's a pandemic baby or what, but my baby was very chill, very self-sufficient, did a lot of things on his own without me trying to teach him anything. Like, he was holding his bottle starting at 3 months. He was sleeping through the night at 5 months. He taught himself how to walk. The first week, I remember he had just turned 10 months. And that first week of me celebrating his 10 months, I saw him stand up on my ottoman, and next thing I know, he just took off walking, and I was like, okay, well, this baby is moving a lot faster than I expected. I honestly did not expect him to walk that soon.
All right, so I can't really recall a situation that I would consider different other than the fact, again, of our son just being a quick learner. But realistically, I just really contribute that to all of the one-on-one time that he receives and the weekly routine that we have him on, where he's getting books daily read to him. He's even learning to identify, letters and words and colors and things like that. So I wouldn't really consider that being because he's a pandemic baby. I just feel like that's the time that's being put in with him that has gotten him to that level. But now that everything is back up, like, let's keep it real. If you live here in Atlanta, we were open back up a long time ago. It seemed like we never really closed, but now that everything is back open, like pre-pandemic, I am learning the importance of getting your kids involved, right? It was fun, watching our son. The first time we ended up taking him to the park to be able to swing, it was fun just being able to watch him enjoying it, his laughs, that was priceless to us. Or, him actually being afraid when we slid down the slide together. I think it's important to still find a way to start implementing the motor and social skills. And so what we have started to do, my husband and I, we video chat with family members so that he can stay familiar with, others that don't live in our home, and he can communicate with them, be familiar with them. Another thing we've done is we've also, our friends group, we get together, like I mentioned, literally this one friend circle that we have, all of us had pandemic babies. And so we try to get together with them so that the kids can have play dates and be together and get familiar with each other, practice those social skills, and things like that. And then also we love taking our son on walks, and, with his nanny, his grandparents, they go on walks just to get him acclimated with exploring nature, being able to see other people that are walking around, being able to see cars. He loves cars, and just the world outside of our home. That's how we've been trying to kind of get him involved and keep him involved with other things outside of our home. And then also being able to engage with him. And so my husband loves football, watches football during the season. And so this is the first season where my son is actually able to be engaged with my husband during this time. Like, they toss the football back and forth, and, he's taught our son touchdown and spiking the ball and things like that. And they talk about the team's colors and things, just to keep him intrigued during the game. Also, while my husband's enjoying it as well. And then, so lastly, again, just taking out the time to try to get them engaged with different things that they may not be used to, right? And so, lastly, I do want to leave you with a few recommendations on how to be able to help transition your child to what is known as the new normal. And that's what this is. So we talked about masks earlier, but if your child is 2 years old or older, letting them get comfortable with wearing a mask at some places, because they still are required some places. So them being comfortable with it, again, if it's required, will make it easier. Letting them wear it and play with it at home. Again, having that dialogue with them of why you have to put a mask on, or why you may not have to wear it during this time, like if you're at a park and things like that, just so they're a little bit more familiar and they're more comfortable with it. And then also, taking your time with getting them comfortable with social settings. And so I know in the beginning when we first started bringing my son around other people, it was a shock to him. He would cry and he would just want to be around me or his dad. And so the biggest recommendation here is don't force it, and then initially just make sure that you're going to be there, just so you can be close for comfort. But the biggest thing with that is just consistency. Just keep doing it. Like we just celebrated one of the toddler's first birthday. Well, one of the baby's first birthdays, now becoming a toddler. And just my son was everywhere playing with all the kids, and he was good because, again, the consistency of him being around, he's familiar with their faces and learning them and playing with them and things like that. All right. And then also, being intentional with your conversations. Please don't discredit your little ones. They know how to communicate with you, even though you may not understand everything that they're saying. But being sure to, have conversations with your child, talking to them, listening to them, especially if they seem concerned or worried about something. Again, as a toddler, it's still necessary to go ahead and start implementing that. And, let's just say that they're crying a lot, taking out time to try to communicate with them on getting them to let you know why whatever the reason is bothering them so much, causing them to cry. And then also being sure to validate their feelings. That's going to be key. And I think that's beautiful within itself because they're recognizing it at an early age. So as they continue to grow, this is something that they will grow appreciating and understanding that their feelings do matter. And then here's another one, getting them involved, whether it be with other children, like I just mentioned, whether it be with family members, like our son goes to his grandparents' house, every few weeks, just to spend time with them, right? Or getting them into other environments. He hasn't been to too many restaurants, but he's been to a handful so far, where he's been able to kind of learn, let me take that back. To allow us to be able to teach him how he should act in public places. Okay. And so getting them accustomed to places out of their home is going to be important. Even if you're not ready to do those things, just walking them around the neighborhood and, pointing out various objects to them so that they can learn how to recognize other things. And then lastly, and most importantly, is giving yourself grace during this transition. If it is a challenge for you, like it was for me, maybe focus on transitioning yourself first so that when you do start transitioning your little one, you're a little bit more confident, when doing so for your child, and they don't really see the stress or the fear on you, because you've already reached that milestone where you're good to go and now ready to help them get through it as well. Okay. All right. Now that is going to be our time for today, but before leaving, I have to end with a quote of the day. This one today is going to be by Naya Rivera. And it says, "You're always going to wonder if you're doing things wrong. But that's what it means to be a mom, to care so much about someone else that you just want to be as perfect as possible." And you are perfect. You are perfect in their eyes. And so again, just continue every day, giving it your best, knowing that no mom is perfect. No one is perfect. But then knowing that you are giving your all and you're trying to be the best you that you can, that makes the biggest difference. All right. Now, keep in mind, like I mentioned, this is our final episode of season 2. So I definitely want to thank each and every one of you listeners. Please be sure to subscribe, continue to like, follow, and share, and even comment. Like I mentioned earlier, if you have some content that you're hoping to hear about, feel free to let me know. I'll be happy to incorporate it into one of our seasons. And then I know while you are anticipating season 3, which will be coming in weeks to come. We'll get through the holidays and things like that. But I do want you to be sure, if you haven't done so, to check out any episodes that you've missed from season 1 as well as season 2. They are all available on major podcast networks, as well as if you, want to see the video format, you have YouTube. We have everything there. And so until next time, I want to remind you to keep your head up, because your little one is watching you and always admiring you. Okay. And continue to take care of yourself. And I'll see you next time on season 3 of I'm the Mama podcast. Take care.